We'll be taking a deep dive into AI and crypto now, a pairing that could bring unimaginable results, but not right away. Our next guest is breaking down the merge of AI and blockchain. Joining us now is Paul Brody, EY Global Blockchain Leader. Paul, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Paul, where are you?
I'm actually in New York City today.
Okay, you look like
I'm at the EY office in 1 Manhattan West.
You look like you're hovering over Earth.
Yeah, the background is epic, Paul. All right, we're going to talk about an op-ed you wrote for CoinDesk about blockchain and AI coming together. One of the things you know is that AI is generally not good at coming up with repetitive tasks. Tell us why this point is important when we're talking about the relationship between the two technologies.
Yeah, so for a lot of enterprise processes, companies stitch together business processes across multiple core technologies. So it could be an ERP system, could be a point of sale system like you'd have in a retail store, would be EDI connecting them together. And the problem with stitching them all together is they all depend on very precise input. And the problem with AI systems, especially generative AI systems, is they produce this very sort of interesting, human-readable kind of content. And that tends to break the output of these systems, which really likes very neatly formatted and consistent data. So early on in this process, it's going to take time to really structure and plan through and think about how these systems connect together, because enterprise process is mostly about taking something standardized, repeatable, and scaling it up really massively.
So, I mean, like, why can't you just start off by telling, the system, hey, repeat, and do that and just hope for the best here?
So I think they just don't really do that, right? So if you give even minor variations, one of the fun things about working with these generative pre-trained transformers is minor variations in the input give you quite interesting and dramatic variations in output. But as we've all seen, some of these things there are a couple of issues. Number one, we have trouble reverse engineering what the answers are. That's a big problem when we try to understand why it gave us the answer it gave us. And number two, even small changes in the input produce pretty unpredictable outputs. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're really bad. Yeah. And so if you think, not to pick on this poor guy who was the lawyer who did used GPT for his references, right? But it produces output that looks really plausible. And the question is, what is your tolerance for the possibility that some of that output is just straight up wrong? A lot of enterprise systems don't tolerate a lot of bad answers.
Many of the raise announcements we've seen in the space recently have had, the companies that have raised have had an AI element to them. And what I hear you saying is maybe it's a little early. Like so often in the space, we say we're so early, and now we're introducing another really early technology. Talk to me about when AI and blockchain are actually going to work together, and what could the timeline look like for these companies that are brand new in the crypto space that are also incorporating AI?
So we're already seeing AI and blockchain work together. So I don't want to come across as too pessimistic. So AI is actually really good at reading and interpreting some things. It's really valuable in analytics. I see AI being particularly valuable in reading and understanding blockchain transactions. You have to have some tolerance for the possibility that occasionally the answers might be wrong. But AI systems can give you a lot of mostly right answers at scale. And there's some analytical business processes where having the right answer 95% of the time is more than good enough. So we're already seeing these things work together. We're going to see huge impact of AI in software development for blockchain, because AI systems will write code for software developers, but software developers will check it and test it before they put it into production. So what's going to happen in the next kind of few years is that we're going to be very carefully figuring out what are these places where the strengths of AI, the ability to absorb data and spit out stuff that looks really good, will work nicely with solutions that can tolerate some level of error, or where there's a proofreading process and a correction process before it goes into production. So we're sort of navigating this fitting process, and at the same time, both blockchain and AI are going to be getting much, much better. So we've really just kind of tasted the tip of the iceberg, or seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's likely and possible.
It's part of the problem, though, that AI is in some ways in the eye of the beholder. I'll tell you why. 30 years ago, when I started trading, more than 30 years ago, I was at a desk, at a trading desk, and they said, we use AI. And really what they were using was just basically moving average cross trading. We have a bunch of MIT and Caltech guys here. And what they did was just did moving averages crossing each other, which anybody can do. But they told everyone it was AI. So what's basically, how are we defining AI versus algorithmic programming, et cetera? Like, what makes it so different? And most of the stuff that we're seeing in blockchains, people saying, oh, it involves AI, is it just hokum?
It's not hokum, but there's definitely a bit of sprinkling of that. We see exactly the repeat. I was talking with my colleague at EY who's in charge of AI, and I was like, are you ready for the sprinkling of AI on everything? Because I can tell you it was just like that with blockchain. And there's absolutely some of that going on. And I am by no means an AI expert, but the way I distinguish, because I am a person with a background in econometrics and some of the more algorithmic side of things, we program algorithms. We create algorithms, but we train machine learning or generative pre-trained systems. So one of these is actually setting up like an algorithm where you lay out the mechanics of this. And another, the more sort of genuinely AI or ML component, is where you train an algorithm on a data set and you then give it feedback in order to improve the output. And so one of these produces a very predictable, understandable result, which is the algorithm side. And one of these produces much more unpredictable, potentially quite a bit more creative and intelligent results over time, which is the AI or ML component.
Paul, you have a book coming out in July, Ethereum for Business. The foreword is written by CoinDesk Chief Content Officer Michael Casey. Tell us about the book.
So I'm really excited about this book. I actually think it should be out in about 10 days rather than in July. So basically, this book is the book I've been sort of thinking about and writing little bits and pieces of to some degree in my CoinDesk columns for a couple of years, which is I wanted to create a plain English explanation for how enterprises can use Ethereum for business transactions, and a little bit less focused on financial services and DeFi, and much more focused on some pretty mundane use cases like supply chain management, procurement, enterprise asset management, global, cross-border trade, things like that. And so the goal is, in plain English, understand what's important, understand how things like privacy work, understand how tokenization works for enterprise use cases, and then go into each one of these use cases, how they work, what you have to consider when implementing them, and what the success cases or the returns look like.
I expect a free copy.
Two of them.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it, and you can go and order a copy on any of the online places where books are sold.
Awesome, Paul. It's always such a pleasure to have you on the show. That was Paul Brody, Global Blockchain Leader at EY.